This week's On Story, Mayans M.C. co-creator and executive producer, Elgin James.
To play music first, and so everything becomes like rhythmic. Like you want to live with the character. You need to have like for that crescendo, you need to have that silence. And so everything's always music to me.
In this episode, filmmaker Elgin James discusses his personal process when directing, writing, and scoring films, and where he pulls his inspiration from when creating his hit television shows. One of the biggest things that people say from the stage at the festival about writing is write what you know. And I feel like you have taken that advice to heart. Gang life, your music career, prison experience, it's all in your stuff. But it's more infused in your stuff, and it seems like you've been able to distance yourself from your personal experience in a way that makes it really relatable to an audience. Is that a conscious part for you?
I had like no interest in telling those stories because it's just like I grew up surrounded by these amazing women, like my mom, my sisters, my aunt's like a barrel racer, like my grandma Uni, my like aunts are all just like complex, crazy, out of their minds, like so strong and vital. And I was so fascinated by that, right? And my dad was just this man who'd come around once a week or every few days and just bully and push and torment and throw tantrums, even though he's this big 300-something pound man. So I had no fascination with dudes. I was, horrified to be thrown into the world of boys. I guess mastered that for better or worse, much for worse in a way, being in a gang and going to prison, et cetera. But I have no interest in trying to tell that story. So even when I did Little Birds, right, that's a story about me and my best friend we were from these two small New England towns, and we went away to the city and we joined this street gang that became this international street gang now. But I turned us into two 15-year-old girls leaving the Salton Sea and going to LA. Because I felt I could be more honest then. So I think what we've tried to do with Mayans and with Outlaws in a way, and with anything we've done, is try to still infuse that. It's almost like subversively, because even in Mayans, which is a show about, if you guys aren't aware, is about basically a Mexican-American motorcycle club. And how we've made the show, it's all about the consequences, because I understand the consequences of violence. And I have this body bag of shame of all the things that I've done that have been happened to me in my life. And so that's how we try to tell that story, as opposed to glorifying it and making it like sort of wish fulfillment.
In Little Birds, there were two really interesting pieces that struck me that were the vulnerability of these girls that you've captured. And then you set it in this place that I think, in the Salton Sea.
You know what happened is I moved to LA. Like I'd always had the dream of making movies and TV. And it was just, I think for all of us, it's just like, that's so unreachable. That's so impossible. And at the time I was in a gang in Boston. And so I'd always like sneak away from my friends. I'd be like, yo, dude, I gotta go hang with this girl I met last night. And they'd be like, you didn't meet any. What are you talking about? I'm like, no, bro, just trust me. I met this girl. And then I'd go to these art house theaters, like the coolest corner theater. And my mom got sick. And that was a big difference, so I got to spend the last few weeks with her in the hospice care. And, I made all these promises to her. And then my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we just left Boston. We just packed all our stuff in a van with our dog Myra and just drove out to LA. We're like, we're gonna make this happen. Got to LA, and because of the gang and because of all these other things, this project about my life story came up really quickly, or it felt quickly. And I was like, oh, making movies is easy. Like, what's the big deal? But I wasn't gonna write or direct. I was just like the dumb gang dude they brought in the room, right? And I'd always come home so sick to my stomach. And it was my wife who was just like, yo, like, don't do that. Like, it's okay, we'll figure it out. Like, don't do it. I see how this is killing you already. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna write it myself. And then I try to write it. I'm like, how do I do this and not make it this sort of like Robin? How do I capture all of this? How do I capture loving my friend, but also feeling like we're stealing each other's oxygen? Like, how do I capture that? And then I'm like, we went to go to the Salton Sea, because if it's this wild place in Southern California that in the 1950s was sort of like this resort town. And then it's not a resort town anymore, let's just say. It's not a resort town.
You're ugly.
So?
So don't go walking around here acting like you better than everybody else.
I don't.
You told my brother you was gonna burn down my house?
No. Liar?
ask your again. Did you tell my brother you was gonna burn down my house? Don't look at that, look at me, look at me.
No, I didn't say that.
The next time I see you, I'ma stab you on your little frizzled head.
And then we roll up there, and there was this girl who was on the back of her boyfriend's BMX bike, like standing on the pegs, and she had a cigarette pack rolled up in her sleeve. And with her arms around him, they're riding by, and I'm like, oh, I know that. Like, she's never gonna leave here. She's daydreaming about being anywhere else, and I know that feeling. And the Salton Sea is just like, the beaches are literally, I mean, there was sand there, but it's also like dead fish scales, like bird bones. And that's how, even though I grew up in beautiful New England, that's how it felt. Like, I felt like I was dying, and the people around me were dying. And so that's, I was like, I'm gonna make this into two 15-year-old girls. This is brilliant. I had an agent at William Morris, and so I told him this, and then I no longer had an agent at William Morris who dropped me immediately. And so I just wrote it myself.
So you go from writing the script, though, to actually directing the actors. Yeah. And that, like, did you have any of those past experiences that you had that really helped you do that?
Being in a gang and dealing with all these, like, I guess, alpha males who are also very emotionally bruised, you know what I mean? And also very fragile and tender for all their violence. I think that just seemed pretty natural to go to that. And I think there's just, I think what's interesting about filmmaking is there's an intimacy that you can have that sometimes, like, it's hard to have in real life. And, like, you can get the camera close, and if you've ever seen anything that I've done, I use a lot of, like, like long lens close-ups, so you're just, like, right with the person, right? I also think I was partly blind, but also just, like, want to be right with them, because emotionally I have trouble doing that.
So I do want to talk about Mayans and just this interesting way you came into that project, which is exactly the kind of project you didn't want to do, right?
It was exactly the last kind of story that I wanted to tell. And I'd shot Little Birds. We shot it in like 17 days. And then it premiered at Sundance in January, and then I went to prison in March, which is like actually a good time, because I would sit there and I'd write and I'd be like, oh, this is what I did wrong. Like, it became like a much better story. Like, it sucked. Prison sucks. Don't go if you can, if you have a choice. But I was able to actually become a better storyteller. I read like 101 books. Like, I was just like very, try to just like work on the craft. And when I got out, you have all these big ideas of what you want to do, but you'd already been the story for a minute. And then this came up that Kurt Sutter was looking for a partner. I'm like, that is exactly the last kind of stories that I want to tell. And then I went to go meet him, and I was telling him that. I'm like, the reason why I joined a gang is because I was terrified of the world. Most of us, not all of us, but most of us were boys who had either bad dads or no dads. So and a lot of us mostly really strong moms. And so we didn't know what it was like to be a man, so we thought just like hurting people would be a man. We wanted to be great. We wanted to shape the world, and if we couldn't shake the world up, we wanted to burn it down. And I had that conversation with Kurt, and he's like, well, that's the show that we should make. And I was like, oh, shit. And he was up again, I'm like, I really don't want to tell these stories. And he's like, that's why you should tell these stories. And that's what started the partnership. And I think for 2 seasons, we didn't get to tell that story, right? And it was Kurt, understandably, because Kurt's an amazing storyteller. He's just like, he was very protective of the mythology of Sons of Anarchy, which we are a spinoff of. And even though we were never allowed to say spinoff, but actually we are. But so he wanted to create that bridge over. And so I think for the first 2 scenes, it's almost like crossing a bridge. You're still kind of for the first 2 seasons, rather, you're still kind of in that territory. You're still in that town. And then by the time you get over to season 3, you're in a completely different town. And the ratings showed that. Because as soon as in season 3, when I sort of became the sole showrunner, which had always been Kurt's plan, like, there was an exodus. Like, our ratings got cut in half in the beginning, because, like, this is not what we signed up for. And then what ended up happening is, again, because women always come to save the day, is like women started watching our show, because we started dealing with the characters and showing who the characters were. Like in season 2, one of our lead actors had come up, he'd been like, do I have a family? Do I have kids? Like, where do I live? I don't know any of this stuff. And then in season 3, he had, because I was about to have a son, or I was about to have a child, so he went through the loss of a child with his story, because I was so terrified of having a child and what that could mean. So long story short, women came, they started watching the show, so our ratings went back to what they were, and then actually for the first time, Latinx people started watching the show, because they didn't really watch the show for the first 2 seasons. So we equal that, which is awesome.
Let's talk about that, because I think that's a really interesting, unexpected turn, right? You're on a show, it's successful, so, and then all of a sudden you screw with the mix.
Yeah.
Talk about how you went into that room and changed the storytelling.
I just went in, even before season 3, I was like, yo, this isn't TV, like, this is poetry. Like, TV just feels so disposable to me. It's different. It's just like with a film can change your life. It's like a song can change your life. It's like a poem. You take these few words, you put them together, and suddenly it describes something you feel in your bones, you could never try to articulate. And with TV, there's just so many fingers in the mix, you know what I mean? And it takes so long, and it's done so fast that it feels so disposable. I kind of hate it. And I'm like, we have to make poetry. Like, this has to be poetry. And so I made this, like, kind of a manifesto. Like, this isn't TV, this is poetry. And I gave it to Disney, who loved it, and I gave it to FX, and I gave it to all the writers and the actors. But it takes a while. It took until about episode 6 where we finally got to slam on the brakes. This is what we're doing. We're gonna break. You guys are just trying to make better television. We're not trying to make television. We are now a 10-hour movie. We're no longer a TV show.
You've been watching On Writing and Directing, Hustle and Flow, a conversation with Craig Brewer on Story. Want to see On Story live?
Yes.
Join us at Austin Film Festival's annual Writers Conference each October.
What the is that? That is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Visit www.austinfilmfestival.com to find out more about badges and passes to attend the festival.
Ooh, I want to go too, because you keep saying how good this movie is.
It did feel like network television in those first 2 seasons. And then it was like you went Sopranos and Godfather, and it definitely, like, some of the characters became much richer and more interesting, especially the main one. Easy feels like Michael Corleone a little bit, I mean, he's kind of taken this route. But how does that affect a writer's room?
It's what everybody wanted, but then it was like, you gotta put up. Like, now the obstacles that everyone wants to rail against, like we all want to, it's so easy to sit back and like, oh, I want to do that. They won't let me do this. And it's like, well, it, now you can, and now you have to. So there's a lot of that with all the actors. So J.D. Pardo, who's the lead, is sort of like, he's like, my dude, this is like our show because we have the most to lose. Like, for season 3, it was like, if this fails, this is the first time he's like really carrying a show. So we're just like, this is ours to lose. And I remember him calling me, because we talk every few days, even in the hiatus. And he's like, we have to fail. Like, we have to not be afraid to just fall on our faces. I'm like, dude, that sounds terrifying. That sounds like a terrible plan. And he's like, this is what we have to do. And so we talked to all the actors. I'm like, you guys, the train's running. You're either gonna be on the train or it's gonna roll right the over you. Like, you have no choice. And if you're not on it, we have this big thing that's happening at the end of the season, and where lots of people can die. So this is it. And then, for better or worse, everybody stepped up. Everybody stepped. It was incredible. Like, everybody was on their A game. Everyone had their chance. And we have a lot of like not particularly professional actors on the show. This is kind of their first shot. And everyone went to such great lengths. It was amazing. But then no one could die at the end. That was the hardest part. We had to manufacture people to die. Although season 4, people start dying.
That didn't last.
Yeah, it didn't last.
Because Coco broke my heart.
And that's a perfect, so Richard Cabral, who plays Coco, and Coco's a perfect example. In season 1, he kills his mom. And then there's no repercussions about it. And Richie and I, we both been in prison before, so we met at a prison reform panel. And I'm like, yo, bro, I just got this show. You got to be on my show. Come be on my show. So we did. And so for season 1, we're like, yo, man, like, that's not it. Like, we did it. Yeah, we're on TV, but it's not it. And then season 2, he's like, that was even less it. That was it. I'm like, dude, season 3, this will be it, I promise. And then he had a deal. Also, so spoiler alert, but these guys also traffic in heroin. And our country, obviously, for many years now has been going through this opiate crisis, and it's destroying people and destroying families, and it's disgusting and awful, and there's never been any repercussions and consequences. So we took our favorite character, we made it all go through, and which was Richie was so excited to do. We put it all in that character to show the consequences.
So, last night was fun.
I f***ed up, Leticia. I need help. I don't think I could do this by myself. We've been talking, and we're gonna get clean.
You also turned this other character on her ear, and I think she's become a really interesting character to me, really complex, as Adelita. You have a couple of female characters that in the first 2 seasons seem very traditional, what you would expect. But by season 3, she goes, really...
When I created that character for the pilot, it was just like, I was everything. Like, I knew we were gonna be in this world, but there's gonna be this one character who's gonna turn everything on its ear, like you said, just this one subversive character that we've never seen before that's f***ed up and complicated and complex, and not just a woman that there's a lazy screenwriter thing where you just give her male characteristics so she seems strong, or aspirational that I think sometimes happens with other screenwriters, where it's like, oh, she's perfect. Especially for seasons 1, like she had interesting stuff, but it just felt networky, right? So season 3, once those chains came off, we just went. And Carla was another one who's just so ready for it. And she was just ready to show, because that's what it is. When you write, all of us who are writers, you basically take everything that's like up about you, and you put it on the page, like all your heartbreak and agony and hopefully joy if there's some and everything else. And then you give it to your actors who then make it like flesh and blood and bring it this whole other level we can never imagine. And that's what Carla did. And she just took off.
One of those things I think has become, especially in television these days and in the cable world, is become really prevalent is that anti-hero. They've turned this anti-hero into somebody that we're all supposed to love, right? Because they're complicated, but they're horrible. They're making these bad choices, and they just keep making these bad choices. In this case, like, you see them making bad choices, but you also see them trying not to make bad choices. Yeah. And I think that's what's happened in season 3 and 4 that I find so interesting about the characters, because it's like even Coco tried, and that it makes me feel like those characters are people I can stick with, that I actually want to see what they're going to do next time, because maybe they're not going to do what I think they're going to do.
I think you're totally right about just seeing the character do the bad thing over and over and over again. They become sort of numb to it, right? And this becomes like, even though we're in the golden age of television, it now starts like sort of like kind of cannibalize itself. Like, we've seen all these things, and like, but now it's placed here, and now it's set here. And I think with Easy, some of the choices that he makes, they're like really tough, but for him, in some ways, there's the right choice. And J.D. Pardo, if anyone's aware, is like probably one of the most handsome human beings on the planet, right? And he could get by with that. He has this great smile, this like killer smile, but he's also he's an artist, and that's what he has the ability to show. So this goes off, and this will seem like a very, I apologize in advance, very diagonal answer, but it all comes down to music. Right? Because I played music first, and so everything becomes like rhythmic. And that's why it drives me crazy with networks notes all the time. I'm just like, can't we just cut out, like, why does this girl have to walk all the way down the aisle and check in this scene in the grocery store and then go bring her tray to the cash register? Why can't we just get to when she explodes and smashes this stuff and throws eggs at the lady? Let's get to that. I'm like, because then you haven't earned all those other moments. Like, you want to live with the character. You need to have, like, for that crescendo, you need to have that silence. And so everything's always music to me. I'm like, guys, this is gonna be like Bruce Springsteen's Backstreets off the Born to Run album, right? Because what happens if you hear it, it comes in strong, and there's a piano line that becomes a chorus. What you don't understand is, like, in the post-chorus, right after, there's this other little piano line, there's a few notes, like, no big deal. Hey, I'm just this little line to bring you to this bridge into the verse. And they keep doing it. And then it pops up again underneath the guitar solo, like, hey, don't pay attention to me. Check out that sick guitar solo. I'm just back here in the background. And then what ends up happening at the end, the whole song flips and turns on itself, and that piano line becomes the theme. And it's been there the whole time. So it's epic, but it's also like, this is inevitable. And I think that's what we've done with JD. It's the same sort of thing. It's like trying to explain it. It's just like, it's the same way of like, oh, this seems, he was like the good boy. He was supposed to go to Stanford and all these things. But this is darkness that's inside. And once you start to go back, this was here the whole time. There's no way we could not end up here with this moment with this woman, with the love of his life, and what ends up happening when they get reunited in season 4.
What the do you want?
Gabby? Gabby? Are you okay? Gabby? Hey, are you okay? Gotta relax. Gabby!
So that's hopefully what we try to achieve, is just like the inevitability, I think is the right word.
So we've talked about the darkness. Now we're going to go to the light. Outlaws.
Yeah, it must be a different show then. Yeah.
You know, this odd pairing of you and Stephen Merchant. But just sort of first of all, the fact that nobody had done a comedy around community service is kind of strange. It just seems like, really? Did people miss that? Like, how did that happen?
Steve had seen Little Birds, and he'd had this idea because his parents had both run a community service thing in Bristol, England. And so it was always kind of in the back of his mind. So he saw the film and was like, I think I could maybe do something with this dude. And then I loved, obviously we all knew like The British Office, but he has a show called Hello Ladies that he did on HBO that is nails LA. And he captured it so perfectly, so I was such a fan. And then we met, and it was just like, it was like love at first sight. I just learned so much from collaborating with him and the two of us. And I think it was hard for people because, like, oh, I understand, you're gonna be like the dark guy who's gonna bring like the crime element, and then he's like the funny guy. And we're both just so much more about those things. Like, we did The Outlaws first as a feature, and then it was like, oh, I guess we're done. Like, let's just keep hanging out. So maybe we'd make it into a television show, and then we could be with the characters a lot longer, and then that's ended up happening. So when we started this like maybe 6 years ago.
I love episode 1. I just love episode 1 from a craft perspective.
Excuse me, miss. I need to look in your bag.
Why?
Can I look in your bag, please?
You set so much up beautifully when the way you start off with her stealing, and then the chase.
Ronnie? What's going on?
It sets up a tone for that first episode.
It was really just a mix of everything that we love, and that's really what it was. We got to kind of throw everything against the wall, hopefully in an organic way. And especially because we had the feature, and all that stuff sort of happened in the feature, but it was just packed into 90 pages. And then so we got to sort of extend it all, but it could become, again, it's two things. One, it comes down again to rhythm of like where we go, and you're trying to get that rhythm right, and you can't really tell. It has to be in your gut. We already know. We also have our own rhythm, and we have our own cadence, and that's really all voices. Like, all your voices is like, one, maybe you're a little darker, maybe this and this, but it also comes down to just like, what do those words look like? What's the syllables? Like, I actually, because I have a learning disability, I don't read a script. Even after I write, I listen back to it all the time. So then I'm just like, oh, this is really musical here. I'm like, oh, I have to take out the. There's too many thes there. But it also comes down in a bigger way of just like, oh, yeah, here it is. Now I want to go here. Like, when are you craving it? When do you want to get out? Like, when's the right time to get out? And you want to get out before you give too much. There was like a real Western vibe in there. Even like with the score, it was like, even though these are the suburban people living in suburban Bristol, England, like for all of us, all of our stakes are really high. And how do you capture that?
I think one thing I noticed between Little Birds and Mayans in particular, and even in The Outlaws, is that it feels like a lot of the characters that you're involved with are familially disenfranchised, and they're searching and creating another family.
Yeah, 100%. It is that journey of trying to find those people and find your people and to find your family, because you're not said that it comes from not being safe in your own home. And I have to deal with that emotional truth, which I think we do as like filmmakers and storytellers. Like, we're not documentarians, or I'm not a documentarian. You have to tell maybe not a physical truth, but an emotional truth. And so my emotional truth is that of trying to find I was much safer with my gang. That's the thing. I was safer with my brothers, and that was the whole reason why you join a gang, because it was just like, if you're my brother in that gang and someone has a problem with you, it's not your problem. Just stay here, you're safe. I'm gonna go take care of it, and then vice versa. And if you grew up unsafe, that's the most beautiful feeling in the world. Like I said before, it's intoxicating. So that's where I think the characters are still trying to find that.
You've been watching On Creating Mayans M.C., a conversation with Elgin James on OnStory. OnStory is part of a growing number of programs in Austin Film Festival's OnStory project that also includes the OnStory radio program, podcast, book series, and the OnStory archive, accessible through the Whitliff Collections at Texas State University. To find out more about OnStory and Austin Film Festival, visit onstory.tv or austinfilmfestival.com. Want to be in the know on the latest On Story episode? Be sure to subscribe to the Austin Film Festival's YouTube channel below and follow us on our social media at AFF On Story.